Welcome to Tough Conversations with David Wood, where play meets depth. We help teams and high-performing leaders like you to master your tough conversations so you succeed in your career and in your life. When we avoid tough conversations, we stay small. Teams stay disengaged, conflicted, and ultimately end up quitting. When we lean in and master our tough conversations, they become the defining moments that literally shape our careers, our relationships, and our lives. So let's dive in and master your next tough conversation so you can be the leader that you would follow. Let's play.
Let's have a blast, man.
Let's have a blast. Welcome to another episode of Tough Conversations with David Wood, and I'm joined by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Welcome, Dr. Ben.
Very grateful to be with you.
And I like that way to start. Let's have a blast. Why not? Dr. Benjamin Hardy is an organizational psychologist, which sounds very fancy to me. He's a successful entrepreneur and best-selling author of Willpower Doesn't Work and Personality Isn't Permanent. His blog is read by millions of people monthly and featured on Forbes, Fortune, and CNBC. And it helps people break free from the shackles of their personality. So tell us I want to know about breaking free from the shackles of personality. Firstly, I'm thinking, what is my personality? Like, how do I see it? Is that me? Is that who I am? Am I more than that? So talk me through that.
Absolutely. I guess it's crucial for you, for me, for everyone to understand that identity and personality are two separate concepts. Identity is how you describe yourself. It's also how you explain yourself. It's how you see and explain yourself to other people, usually in the form of stories. So actually, if you said the statement, "I'm an introvert," as an example, you would actually be describing your identity, maybe more than you would actually be describing your personality. So personality is how you consistently show up in the world. It's behavior and attitude. It's basically just how you consistently show up in situations and stuff like that. And so your identity, which is the story you tell about yourself, for many people, it's not consciously designed, consciously constructed. Often it could be the byproduct, for example, of traumatic experiences or of culture and many other things, right? Or just your environment, the people around you. A lot of people don't spend a lot of time really thinking about their identity.
Okay, so my identity, I tell a story a lot on podcasts because people ask me about my history. And I have the story of my sister died when I was young, and then I grew up very left-brained, and then I learned about personal growth, and I started coming out of my shell.
Yeah.
And I also have this identity as a coach and as a speaker and as an author, and this is kind of like who I am in the world, which is largely not consciously designed, although I have worked on the narrative. And then my personality, could that be that I can be bubbly, I can be down,
your personality is the byproduct of the identity you just described.
All right. So what's an example of my personality from what you've seen so far? And you can be candid.
Very thoughtful person. Very, you and I did an interview and you were questioning if you wanted to, you seem thorough. You seem like you really care. You seem like you're very interested in deep subjects. You seem like you want to have deep conversations. So, I mean, I could sense like maybe some deep, spiritual aspects of yourself, maybe, at least deep emotional aspects of you. And just that you're overall comfortable to be around. I mean, that's what I experience of your personality as an outside observer.
Okay. And I tend to go for irreverence and humor. So, all right, they both seem a bit jumbled to me, identity and personality. Why would I care about my personality and whether it's permanent or not? Like where could I be limited by my personality?
Well, the problem with personality for most people is that they think it's who they really are. They think it's fundamental when it's actually surface level. They think that it's something that's innate, something that doesn't change, something that's hardwired, something that they must discover. It's the true them. And that once you've discovered your personality, which you maybe could find through the use of a personality test as an example, then you can finally create the life you want, whether it's find that perfect career, find that perfect spouse. The idea is that once you've discovered what type of peg you are, you can get through that hole. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so like people are trying to figure out who they are so that then they can pursue something that's meaningful and maybe natural to them.
And then that is what determines your behavior, how you show up in the world. And some of those things might be working for us, and some of those things might not. So I'm trying to get my head around what's a behavior I might be doing or part of my personality that might be a shackle for me that I might want to try and open up or crack open.
Well, it depends on your goal. You know what I mean? Like what is, so let's just look, if you're comfortable with it, I'd be interested in hearing about your goal. So what are you trying to accomplish in your life? Or if you're even more comfortable, where's some area where you're clearly stuck?
Okay. I think I'm stuck in a way. It's not very painful, but I'm stuck in that I'm putting a lot of time and energy into video game right now. And, some of it's fun, like, do a couple of hours a day is fun, but I'm putting in lots of hours and lots of time. And I feel like at the end of the day, I'm a bit drained from all the effort that's going into it. And I'm missing out on what I would consider more grounded, healthy practices like longer walks in the woods, or maybe a conversation with a friend, or more guitar time like that. So I see this happening, and yet it's not shifting. It seems overbalanced, like out of balance in that. I could be putting more work into building my brand because I enjoy speaking gigs. I enjoy coaching. I'd like to have a second book. I could be putting work into that. And I have a goal of financial stability and more success in getting my message out to the masses. And yet here I am just trying to get better over and over at a game, which I actually really enjoy. I can put hours and hours into mastering this thing and trying to develop that skill. Is that the best use of my time? That's where I feel like there's a bit of stuckness, and I can't tell for sure. Am I stuck in this, or is this something I should just really embrace and fully go through until it dissolves, which it will. I've been through this before, and I do a few months of it, and then I'm bored of that.
Well, so here's a question for you. Would you say you have a very clear future self of a version of you that doesn't play video games? Or do you feel like is that something that's going to always be a part of your life?
I think it would be nice to have it be a part of my life, being, say, like an hour and a half a day, something like that. I think that would be fun. It'd be cool. A little bit of downtime like that. And I want more meaningful things. Like I had a friend nudge me to get out and go for a walk with her, and I had a great time. It was amazing. The sun's out. We're walking by the creek. People are out and about. I'm like, wow, I could have missed this. I could have just done another 3 hours of StarCraft. So I think a little bit, but I do have a picture. I do actually have a picture of myself where, I haven't really spoken this out loud, where I'm not.
Remember, hey, Mr. Tough Conversations, this is how you unravel. This is how you get unshackled. So let's hear it.
Thank you. Yeah. I imagine myself not watching TV, not drinking any alcohol, and not using food as a drug as well, to just, because I'm just compulsive to like change my state. So no substances at all, and very light, maybe video game occasionally, or maybe not even that. Maybe I'm just playing guitar, or going deeper with someone, or finding a partner. I don't really know what, or I'm loving my work even more, and I'm just creative and creating things. But I do have a picture.
Well, so is that what you want? Like, would you choose that over what you've got?
feel a little confronted at that idea. If it's like laid out in front of me, wow. I'm not convinced. I get stuck because I imagine that would be more fulfilling.
But there's no proof of that.
There's no proof of that. Like when I do have a really good time, like I'm in a men's group now, and boy, it's rough for me to show up for that group because I want to go and play a game. I don't want to show up with people, but then I have a nice time. I have a couple of hours. I'm out in nature. I'm like, there's a part of me that goes, this is good balance, because it makes the other stuff more fun. And I need some balance. But would I want like all that? I want more downtime where I'm just pottering about the house, maybe listening to some music, because I actually do enjoy a little bit of that. I just don't seem to be able to do a lot of it. It's like I'm called constantly to something, and too much of this game is counterproductive. I'm definitely finding that. So it's like a constant battle to try and, like, I might pick up the guitar for 3 minutes and I enjoy it, and then I put it down and I go back to the game. Or I'll take my dog outside and I'm like, oh, wow, it smells so good out here. And I do about a minute, 2 minutes, and my brain's like, why are you only doing 2 minutes? You love that. So I think I'm stuck in a logic loop, or
Yeah.
some kind of thinking loop. I do get those moments.
By the way, I played World of Warcraft for like 15 hours a day back in the day, but that was literally 13 years ago. But
well, yeah. I feel closer to you hearing that.
Dude, yeah. I played World of Warcraft for years, and I played it literally 15 hours a day. But that was like, I was 19 years old and I was incredibly depressed. And I don't know, have you ever read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
No.
It's about the Holocaust, because he survived the Holocaust. He was a Jewish person who got taken into the Nazi concentration camps, and 6 million people got killed and starved, but he survived. But from his perspective, and he was a psychologist and he was very observant while he was in there, one thing he noticed is that when a person lacked a sense of hope and purpose for their future, that the present became meaningless. And when the present is meaningless and you're in a Holocaust and you're surviving, what that means is that the suffering becomes unbearable and you die. What that means maybe in modern society, if you don't have a clear future that's driving you, which, by the way, from Frankl's perspective, and he said this, he said, what man needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. So if you don't have a freely chosen task, which we're defining as purpose, and you have hope in that you're actively striving for it, because he said you don't need a tensionless state. What you need is actually striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal. If you don't have that, then your present lacks a lot of meaning. And if you're being overly passive, what that means is that you're going to experience a lot of depression. And so passivity in many ways creates depression. It definitely doesn't facilitate deep learning experiences or peak experiences. And so in modern society, without a lack of hope and purpose for the future, you're not going to have a lot of meaning in your present. You're going to probably distract yourself from reality, but also you're not going to be able to tap into what's called grit. So grit being like, being super gritty and being able to persevere through extreme challenges, that literally relies upon hope. This is why you would want to clarify your future self very specifically, not something you discover, but something you choose, a freely chosen task. And then you do get a lot of joy and also a building of confidence by striving and struggling towards that, by failing on it, by actually devoting yourself. Like there's another quote and I'll stop, but basically it's the idea of the only way to make your present better is by making your future bigger. And if you're not actively striving for if you're not actually striving for a specific future, then your present's probably drifting. That's a Dan Sullivan quote, by the way.
Oh, I love Dan Sullivan. I quote him as well. The only way to make your present better is to make your future bigger.
Yep. And so, yeah, I mean, if you haven't, but you need to clarify your future self first, and that then becomes the basis of your new identity. Rather than being so obsessed of your current self, it's your future self.
I like this. So yeah, I can see that that's what could be missing. So we need that tension, that gap. And Dan Sullivan talks about the gap between where you want to be and where you are right now. And so I do have a sense of my future self. My desire is to be sought after, so that I can use my skills around tough conversations, authenticity, transparency. I would like companies to come to me and say, we need this guy, we need you. Or I'd like, with the current racial tensions, I would like someone to say, we've got two groups, we'd like you to facilitate this. I have a vague picture of that. Actually, maybe it's not so vague now.
One crucial insight, and I guess this takes us to thought number 2, is that your current self is temporary, that you're not the same person as you used to be. You actually have changed over the last 5 to 10 years. My guess is if I had a conversation with you 5-10 years ago, it wouldn't be exactly the same conversation. Maybe it would be, but I doubt it. My guess is you've actually changed quite a bit over the last 5 to 10 years. And so it's important from like an identity perspective to recognize that you're not the same person you were in the past, and also that your future self will be different. You're going to change whether you are intentional about it or not. Life is going to change you. You can change a lot if you're very intentional and you're actively and courageously moving towards chosen goals and stuff like that. But you're going to be a different person in 10 years from now.
That makes sense. Okay. So personality really is impermanent. And we know that because our personality now is very different to, say, when we were 12 or when we were 20 or
huge.
When we were 30.
Oh yeah. Lots of research on that. But the key point here is that your current self doesn't matter that much. As weird as that sounds, because your current self is temporary. A tendency that people have is to overly define their present self. I'm a gamer, one example. But like we really like to label and solidify our current identity, which actually inhibits our creativity and our imagination towards a future self that's different from our present self. When you've overly assumed or overly defined your current self, then you assume that that's who you're going to be in the future as well, which does not have to be the case. It actually won't exactly be the case, but it certainly doesn't have to be the case.
I feel myself opening up just hearing that. It's kind of a letting go of this idea of myself as a coach and a speaker and a trainer and as someone in solitude. And I don't know. That's where I got to listening to you speak. I don't know what's
you can decide who your future self is, and so you can know what's to come, but who you are right now isn't the be all end all. It's up to you what you want in the future. But like right now, so you want actually to hold your current identity a little bit more loosely, whereas most people, they're so rigid about their current identity that they then think that who they are right now is who they're always going to be, and it really stunts their potential for growth in the future. Whereas, I don't know if you've heard of the work from Carol Dweck. She's the one who coined the terms fixed mindset and growth mindset. Have you heard those terms?
If you said fixed growth?
Fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Have you heard those terms? They're pretty popular.
I'm familiar with growth mindset.
Yeah, so Carol Dweck is a Stanford psychologist who coined those terms. And basically what she found, and by the way, someone with a fixed mindset means that they believe that who they are right now is who they're always going to be. They don't believe they can change their skills or attributes or characteristics. Whereas growth mindset, they believe that they can change. Well, what Carol Dweck did is she's done a lot of research, particularly on students, just to see how they respond to situations. And she'll give, like, let's just say 30 students in a class a challenge that they're all going to fail, way above all of their current abilities, just to see how they react. Well, those with the fixed mindset, if let's just say they fail the test, what that means is that they're fully defined by who they are right now. That means that they can't overcome this obstacle. Like, this obstacle proves to be above them. And so they're dumb, and they're defined by where they are right now. And they're never going to be able to overcome such an obstacle. Whereas growth mindset, they fail the test. They're not defined as I'm stupid. Instead, they say I'm not there yet. So people with a growth mindset literally don't care that much about where they're at right now, because they know that in the future, they could be in a completely different place. They could learn that skill, even though they failed it today. And so your current self isn't as important as your future self. And so as a result, your current self shouldn't be overly defined or overly obsessed upon.
Listeners, my takeaway, and hopefully one of yours, is that you can define a future self. You can create that. And you can have goals that create a tension, a positive tension. Like, this is where I want to go and I can achieve it. I can get there, which will make our present better because our future is bigger.
If you don't have tension in your state towards a future self, then what that means is that you don't have hope and purpose for your future, which means your present lacks meaning and context, which is not a great place to be. So I think what you're saying is great. And there's a lot of research, by the way, to point to this idea that we're both talking about. One, there's a guy named Hal Hershfield. He's at UCLA. He studied the idea that when you clarify a future self as a different person than you are today, that's important because your future self will make different decisions than you make today. And they'll look differently upon the decisions that you make today than you look at them. Just like you can look differently upon the decisions your former self has made differently than they looked upon them. And so when you view your future self as a different person, then you can think about what they would prefer versus what you would prefer right now. Maybe you right now prefer playing video games for 15 hours a day, which I'm, again, totally comfortable with. But maybe your future self has a different preference about what, you do today.
Wow.
And then you can then make decisions based on the preferences of your future self versus the present preferences of your current self. Because if you're only making decisions based on the preference of your current self, then your decisions are based on what would be generally considered pain and pleasure.
Yeah.
You play.
I like this. I get the image of us creating a personal boardroom for ourselves, and we add our future self to the board so that
no one better to get information from.
Yeah. Nice. Dr. Ben, I've really enjoyed this. Maybe we can talk another time about all progress starts with telling the truth. I'd love to get into that another time if you're open to it.
That's some gold, my friend. There's a lot of good stuff there. Let's just say one aspect of telling the truth is telling people about who you genuinely want to be, your future self. That's the first place to start.
Nice.
Tell everyone about your future self, the person you genuinely want to be. Take the time to clarify, but start telling people that that's what you would genuinely want. And that will start to lead you more closely to conforming your behavior. The goal is that your future self is the thing predicting your daily behavior, not your former self.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Ben, how can people find out more about you?
Personality Isn't Permanent right here. Check out the book. You can get it anywhere, Amazon, Kindle, etc. My website's benjaminhardy.com. I've got a future self checklist at my website that you can download. And there's also literally a very powerful 20-minute training where I break down how to reframe trauma and how to clarify your future self. So that's at benjaminhardy.com.
I'm going to check out that checklist and that video download. Thanks, man. I've had a really good time. Appreciate you being on the show.
You're amazing, brother. It was a huge honor. You're really fun to talk to.
You've been listening to Tough Conversations with David Wood. Now it's action time. Mastering your tough conversations will have a major impact on your team, your company, and you as a high-performing executive or entrepreneur. If you're ready, request a discovery session with me at playforreal.life so we can transform your team, your company, and you. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I would love you to help me spread this message of tough conversations in a very simple way. Just leave a public review at playforreal.life/podcast. And you may hear me read it out loud and thank you live on a future podcast. Now, let's play.